Welcome to Hacking Business Technology, episode number 4. Today we've got all of our hosts in attendance today. Mr. Matt Barron, that's me, Miss Farah Ramtula, Mr. Mark Kawasaki, and Mr. Matt Hooper. Welcome to the podcast. And today our guest is, as you know because you follow our Twitter stream religiously, Miss Courtney Bartlett. So welcome, Courtney.
Hi, thanks.
Hi, Courtney.
So those of you who don't know Courtney, I'm sorry, first of all. And second of all, she's an analyst at Forrester Research, I think is the actual name.
Forrester Research, yeah. I don't know if there's an Inc. or something after that, but we can just call it Forrester.
Probably. There always is an Inc. of some kind. It's a pen joke. And interestingly enough, you didn't come from an IT background. So give us a little bit of your story. Where'd you come from? What do you do?
My goodness. Well, right now, I'm on Forrester's infrastructure and operations team. I love service catalogs and service portfolio management, but never in a million years did I think that this is what I would be doing with my life. Forrester was my first job out of college, but I went to a liberal arts school and I was an Italian Renaissance art history major with the plan to become a professor of Michelangelo and all things not IT related. So I started at Forrester because I really loved research and I felt like I needed to apply my passion for research to a realm that could pay the bills more than art history, believe it or not. So somehow wound up at Forrester actually on the inquiry team. I'm very much like my doppelganger over at Gartner, Gerard. We kind of have very similar backgrounds, kind of worked our way up through the company. And then just over the years, kind of fell in love with service management. I know that like everybody says that. It's like y'all are tired of hearing that, but like it's so true. I really, really fell in love with the content, and I also just fell in love with Forrester. I love the people, and I saw this incredible opportunity to kind of work my way up and move over to the research side. So kind of created my own little career path, and I've been on the research side of the business for about a little over a year and a half now, and it has been a whirlwind, probably the most like challenging thing I've ever done, but the most rewarding and awesome thing. I'm like so excited. I think it's so cool.
Awesome.
So,
that's a really good story. I love that. I love that you talked about how you did a lot of research in your education, and so now you need a way to apply that. Because I think a lot of people don't really realize that research is still required. Just Google everything.
Well, when you have to read if you research, that would be crazy. Read and write.
So questions. What do we have for questions for Courtney?
Well, my question was, not to jump in first, but since you brought it up, was actually, Courtney, how do you do your research today with, academic research kind of being different? I think about the analysts, and now you're our third analyst on this podcast. I didn't ask the others how they do their research, so how do you do yours?
That's a really good question. So I'm actually still in the process of learning how to do research. I say mainly, I read a lot of stuff, but I think where I learn the most is actually the conversations that I have with people. I learn a ton through inquiry calls. I absolutely love that. But I think right now I'm actually kind of doing my own primary research for the first time. And so I've been in the process of talking to a lot of kind of service catalog vendors just about what they're seeing in the space, what they're seeing in the landscape, what their customers are coming to them with. And it just creates these really incredible conversations that, I start out thinking I'm going to write about one thing, but then it keeps growing to something else. And to me, that's like the beauty in research. So that's kind of the main thing that I've been doing now. But I have a feeling that as I write different kinds of reports, that will evolve. And I also just think that because our world is evolving so much and the availability of information is evolving so much, I think part of our job is figuring out how to sift through everything and find the information that's really important and applicable and relevant, and only doling out just that.
Can't we just use big data? Isn't that what big data does?
Yeah, right.
If I could find big data that could write reports for me in ways that humans could understand, please direct me. That would be awesome.
Nice.
If I could automate the analyst role, although no, because then I would be out of a job.
So do you think that research is getting more shallow then because it's changing so fast and there is so much more data to analyze?
I don't know if shallow. I want to say I want to go with the term responsive. I think it needs to be more responsive, and I think that all of service management needs to be more responsive, and I think that a lot of the things that we preach in the service management world can be applied to how we do research. I think that I kind of feel like almost like a human service catalog, because I'm like taking all of this information that I'm getting and I'm trying to deliver a context-based experience for each individual who comes to me, either it's via a conversation or via a report or this or a webinar or something like that. So I think that less people don't read top to down anymore. They just read in spurts. And I think that yes, shallow in the way that we consume things, but not shallow in the way of content. I think that we need that the content itself has to be very relevant and very deep, but in a way that deals with our lack of attention spans. What was that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good point. It's the connections and the meanings are found in more places and in more unique ways, but yeah, the depth may be not the same as it used to be. But catalog in general is one of the hardest things, I think. Everyone's idea of what a service catalog is different, and I mean, you see people trying to make a catalog many different things and tripping over themselves as they're trying to do it. So I imagine every conversation you have is different.
Yes, it is and isn't. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people are approaching catalog from the bottom down, or the bottom up, I should say. And that's very, very overwhelming. If you tell someone to go say, catalog all of your technical services, build them into business services, build them into business processes, and then figure out which ones are important, people are like, what? So I think a completely different approach needs to be taken when it comes to service catalog. Let's stop calling it a catalog. It's not that at all. We're calling them enterprise service brokering solutions right now, and that's, for lack of a better term, it is like a broker, but
yeah, please.
Can you say that again?
Please find a better term quickly.
Well, maybe that's something we can talk about, but I like calling it a strategic control point, because I really think that's what it is. I feel like companies are becoming these interconnected ecosystems, or at least they need to be, and a service catalog is that layer that's above it all, where all of the information comes in and comes out. And I think that we need to take a more prioritized approach to building it. Whether or not you have a service catalog now, or you don't, or you want one, or you want a better one, I think the way to approach it is from an outside-in perspective, or in this age of the customer that we're talking about at Forrester. Everything that we need, everything that we do in IT should directly impact our customers. And if you can approach a service catalog in that way by thinking, okay, what are my revenue generating services? What are the services that support them? Who are my employees that directly interact with those external customers? Who are my employees who are top performers, and what do they need to do their job better? Start with those services and then figure out how they're interconnected, and then that builds the basis, the essence of your ecosystem, and then you can go from there.
That was nice.
Woo! Service catalog!
Hashtag epic, hashtag outside in. Love it.
Hashtag epic, I love that. You can tell I hate this stuff. I hate it.
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
No, you go ahead.
One of the reasons we started this podcast is because, people asked for it, but I think people are really hungry for leadership. So what do you think about leading an industry? Who is leading this industry? Why does this industry lack leadership and innovation? Or does it? Maybe I'm wrong.
Different issues. And I think, so the leadership issue, actually, well, one of them has to do with leadership, one of them has to do with diversity. So I think it's very difficult to lead right now because of this kind of brave new world that we've built ourselves. I think that the technology that we're being bombarded with and the expectations that comes with, and all of these different ways to interact and connect, I think it's created this entire new realm of social psychology and the way that we interact as humans. I mean, and it's kind of redefining what leadership is. What is leadership? Is it creating something that goes viral like that? Because just because something goes viral doesn't mean that it's worthy. It's just somehow connects to people on some sort of level.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or, you know, and having a social presence. Like, you can't be a leader without having a social presence, but what does that mean? And it's difficult to even define because it's changing every day. So I think that I don't have a good answer for how.
I love that. Viral leadership. That's like the definition of what a lot of us do. Specifically when you're trying to do like bottom-up change in a large organization or bottom-up change in a small organization, it's always this viral leadership. Love it.
Yeah, that's an awesome phrase. I like that.
And companies think if they go viral in some way, they are leading, and that's not necessarily true either.
No, because just because you go viral once, you know, that's a tough act to follow. So then how do you keep staying relevant? How do you keep staying viral?
Yeah.
Well, there's a few politicians that went viral in these positions, but not really in the way I wanted to, right?
I'm moving to Toronto. The drugs there are apparently really good.
Oh dear.
You know, it's funny, I was in Toronto yesterday, and I was meeting with a client, and they were saying that there's somebody in their team who actually heads up customer centricity. In IT, that was their role. Oh, they head up customer centricity here at this company. I'm like, really? So Ian Clayton actually convinced somebody that this stuff was real.
Nice.
Amazing.
That's just a fancy term.
So to kind of bridge together both leadership or viral leadership and, you know, the role of research, you know, I think if I was to reflect on some organizations, I see that a lot of people have challenge with, one, thinking that leadership always has to come from up top, and two, research is up to everyone else. So from your travels and conversations with whether it's different clients or customer spaces, what would be your recommendation or a pathway or maybe, you know, some actions that anyone can take with regards to becoming better at research? You know, your point was there's lots of data, there's, you know, people responding to a lot of data points. How does one take that and move it from just becoming data through the information, knowledge, wisdom kind of pathway?
Wow.
Hashtag loaded question.
These are like the hardest questions we've ever asked.
How do you perform research and make it valuable? Is that kind of what you're asking? Like, or how do I?
Yeah, because I think, you know, if you think of the average employee, they probably don't have any belief that they have the ability to demonstrate some of that viral leadership, or they're so overconsumed by all this data around them they don't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can't reach out to a fancy analyst, I mean, people automatically assume that it's someone else's role. What can they do to make that impact or start taking that step towards utilizing data points, doing research, and starting that viral leadership chain?
Kind of, I guess I would say the approach is, I think it's either inherent within people or it's something they have to learn. So there are two different kinds of analysts. There are those who are born curious, and then those who need to learn curiosity. So I actually feel like I am the latter. I was born curious about art history, and I needed to learn curiosity in IT. And so how I've been able to do that is, I think, what gets me going? What am I passionate about? What do I like to find? I like to find trends and things and patterns and things that aren't necessarily connected, but that's just me. And so, I mean, it's a really individual journey, but I guess if you can...
Well, curiosity is key, like you're saying. I mean, a lot of people try to do research without being curious, and it fails every time.
Yeah, because there's no direction to it.
There's no conclusion.
What are you passionate about? What do you want to do with your life? I mean, a lot of this is like self-help, but it's like, what's your thing? Like, you know, focus on that. And
the self-help expression turned frustration into fascination. I forget which self-help person. I think that's probably about it, right? It's IT folks, they got caught up so much in the frustration that they don't step back and go like, really, what made that person think that was okay just to like pull the plug on that box in the middle of the day? Like, that's like, who thinks like that? That's amazing.
How fascinating.
Yeah, how fascinating.
In order to turn it into something valuable, though, it's not just curiosity. It also takes a lot of courage, and it takes, you know, if you're working in an environment that doesn't foster or appreciate hacking, or, you know, doing your job in a better or different, more enlightened way, then, I mean, it's kind of difficult to grow. But if, I guess you also then just have the 3 C's. You got to be curious, courageous, and confident. Whoa! That'll take you to the next level. Hashtag Dr. Phil.
That's actually a really good point. I love it, right? I mean, so you had to learn how to be curious when it came to IT, but you were born with that sense of curious nature, and you know, and that to me speaks volumes. And I think we have a lot of people who suffer from that same, you know, challenge. Is how do we do the research? How do we build our curiosity? And maybe they are afraid. And I think you know, it comes to cultures, it comes to genders, it comes to personality types. I think all of that kind of influences that space and why certain things happen the way they do or don't.
Yep.
Okay, so my turn for a question. So, Courtney, I wanted to ask you, I'm having a problem with my mom, and I really wondered if you can help me with it. No, I'm kidding. So,
I'm very close with Mama Bartlett, so nice. I mean.
All right, so on the portfolio side, you work on service portfolio as well. I've noticed that, you know, especially in my organization, it's really difficult to do portfolio because I'm in higher ed and it's just difficult in general. But at the same time, you know, we've been talking a lot about cloud services and what's that doing to the industry, and I've noticed that with cloud coming into the picture, portfolio even becomes more difficult because you've got different groups doing different things, not always checking with each other or checking with IT, and IT is not really being a broker of cloud services like they could be. Mm-hmm. One example we have, you know, we did a lot to roll out Box for storage, and then Office 365, and we have, you know, OneDrive now offered through Office 365. So you've got OneDrive, you've got Box. People don't know which one to use. They can't make them go away because the icon's there by default in Office 365. So how do you guide people toward the right solution when cloud is just making things all over the place? Do you find on the portfolio side that you're dealing with that a lot, and is that something that's coming up? How to make a streamlined portfolio that is value-driven when groups are kind of going all over the place because they can?
So the portfolio management side is actually the newer side of the research that I'm doing right now. And right now we are kind of forming what does service portfolio management mean in the future in this whole age of the customer. And so we've kind of been hashing that out right now. And how do I phrase this? Okay, so it really all comes down to that prioritization. I think that maybe the service portfolio management of the past or of current is all services are created equal, where that is absolutely not the case. And how we're thinking is that you should approach a portfolio is, so think of your revenue generating services, you know, the ones that are directly impacting the customers and then the ones that support that. But on top of that, also think, what are the services that are specific to our business? What are the ones that we have to manage or partly manage and, you know, don't want to put anywhere else? And then those are the ones that you should focus on. But then anything that you can push off to someone else, use the cloud for, do so that then you don't have to worry about all of that. And, you know, then also think about your value zone employees and what they need to be productive. And a lot of times those are going to be things like Evernote or, you know, any other thing that's outside of your department. And then direct everybody to that through an intuitive, easy to use catalog. That is your mode of communication of the portfolio, because, I mean, that's your living and breathing thing. That's all of your available services, and then you're also tracking demand and usage, and that will help you determine what's needed and what's not needed, so you can streamline that and then, you know, continue to refine and give everybody exactly what they need. But I think where I see a lot of people struggling is with this, all of these shadow IT things that are popping up that no one knows who's using what company data is where, and I think that the shadow IT is really just a symptom of a reactive, unconnected, uncommunicative environment that is so prevalent. And so if we can just start to, I mean, it doesn't have to be all done at once because it's too overwhelming, but just start prioritizing your services and thinking what is most business critical. No more just.
Courtney, though, isn't the reality? So when I was in Toronto, I saw Troy Dumoulin, who is Dumoulin, I think is how he says it, from Pink, speaking about the value in strategic partnerships. And he was saying there was benefits realization, risk optimization, and I forget what the third one was. But when you look at value and services prioritization, you might say to me, well, this is the most important service for the organization, but if I'm a CFO and I'm looking at like payroll, I'm saying,
it's not.
Yeah, well, this is my most important service, right?
But it may be for you, but it can't be about you anymore.
Yeah.
It has to be about
well, see, that's where I challenge that, right? I am, and Troy brings this out too. He says businesses are republics with different states that all have their certain responsibilities. Now, they come together in a federated way for the benefit of the organization, and I appreciate the concept.
But it's more than just business critical. It's also about core competency. And no one's core competency is doing the finances for their own company. That is just part of what you have to do. It's not your unique business value that you offer to the industry. So that in itself is critical to the CFO, but it's not critical to your business model to make money.
I would agree.
I completely disagree.
Okay.
If you're in a professional services organization, one of your differentiators may be in the way in which you structure your payment for your people. And attracting the top talent is, in fact, the way in which you compensate and pay your folks, and the speed you execute and pay your folks. Right? So if I start a professional services business today and want to attract the most talent that I could in a new web world, I wouldn't pay my folks in salary. I'd pay them in Bitcoin.
So is your statement then that everyone is equal in this republic?
I'm saying that value is relative and prioritization is relative, and so it's a service. It's a federation of service architecture that really needs to come together. This idea of this central service catalog or the central self-service portal is ridiculous. It needs to be contextual based on who I am, what my roles are, what my needs are.
Okay. So
and Google does this for me today. Why can't an enterprise?
I agree with you in the sense that if the way you pay your employees is a differentiating factor for you, then that's what you need to do. That is part of your business model then. If paying them in Bitcoin is something meaningful, you better be able to pay them in Bitcoin better than any outsourcing provider that there is. Then it is a core competency. But if there's somebody better that can do it, then outsource it. If you can run servers better than Amazon, of course, keep them. But good luck.
So I think you're talking something different, though. I'm very pro outsourcing. I think you should outsource everything you possibly can. But it doesn't mean you don't manage the service. Doesn't mean you don't manage the outcome. You always outsource the activity. You never outsource the control.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
So wait, are you disagreeing with each other? So what? Are you saying, so in this republic, it depends, right? So I guess that's what you're saying, Hooper. It depends.
I'm highlighting this premise that we can prioritize our services is an academic expression. In reality, in practice, every enterprise is going to have competing priorities and competing services that need attention and focus.
Sure, but I think every enterprise every enterprise has its competitive advantage or the product or service they end up delivering to the consumer, right? Mm-hmm. So in the case of the CFO, I'm going to say, hey, if I have to start with defining my services and looking at support or letting go of certain control, if you will, and I think that's a separate topic, I'm going to say, are you going to directly impact, if I'm a healthcare organization, is what you do going to impact the outcome of my patient healthcare? To me, if I have to choose between improving or focusing on a portfolio of services that will help doctors directly deliver or improve the quality of healthcare, I'm going to focus on that more than I would on a CFO who's kind of crunching the numbers if the hospital's making money. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying that, you know, there's definitely, to me, a sense of prioritization of things that impact or, you know, directly have that impact to something that's facing the consumer.
You're making my point even more, I think, though,
Yes.
which is in a mission-based organization, it's even more important that those services get, you know, more federated and that there's certain levels of control put to that person. I'm not saying empire build. I really like Troy's analogy of a republic that comes together, right? So for my state, I want to do what's best for my state, right? You know, me and Courtney are Bostonians. You still live in Boston, right, Courtney?
Wait, what?
You still live in Boston? Where do you live today?
Yeah, just moved here.
So we're both Bostonians, right? So, you know, for what's good for Massachusetts may not be good for Atlanta, which is where, you know, Mark and Farah live, you know. So it's, but together we both want the common good of the United States, right? We want the ability to have our economic protections in place, our freedoms, the right to make our own choices as states is a freedom of choice, right? So I mean, you know, those are just my thing. Is this like priority becomes? It depends.
But at some level, you've already come to agreement that there are some common factors, right, that you're all working on for the good of the United States.
Which is your goal and vision. Which is your goal and vision, not your services.
Drives the priority. I'm not saying that, like, you know, some services are going to completely, like, you know, kick the bucket and no one's going to pay attention to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole "it depends" thing is
that
being responsive and, you know, creating a way to approach things that is flexible and agile and can respond to the change, and, you know, maybe what makes them competitive and a differentiator now isn't going to be the same way tomorrow. And so if you can have that kind of proper prioritization, and I don't know,
you can't segregate this stuff, right? So like if you're a hospital, let's say you get that service that doctors need to provide service to patients, like shiny and bright. It's at 150%. It's the best you can possibly deliver. But you can't hire new doctors because your HR services totally suck. I mean, then that becomes the priority. It's not necessarily a higher priority for the organization, but in that instance it may be. So once again, we are in violent agreement.
It's like the project portfolio management. You just said it so well, Baron. Project portfolio management introduced this concept called earned value of a project. And tools started to show earned value of projects so that an executive could kill a project. But what they didn't realize sometimes that a project that didn't have a high stake earned value may have been critical dependency for all these other projects that did already have achieved high earned values. You needed this one to get those, right? So sometimes the priority needs to shift or change. That's why there needs to be a vision management system. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and it's all connected. So thank you for joining us for episode 5 of Hacking Business Technology. You're all connected to this. So get involved with Hacking Business Technology, because you watching it influences our ability to deliver it, influences our prioritization of guests and who's on and when
and
we
the
record.
Republic.
And the Republic, because you're part of this Republic, and it's a
We're also looking at dictatorship, but we don't want dictatorship.
Oh, no. It's more like a commonwealth. Isn't Massachusetts a commonwealth?
That's our Bostonian coming out.
The commonwealth of it depends.
The first ITSM podcast where we talk about politics. So thank you for joining us, Courtney. It was lovely having you. Thank you to all my hosts.
This was so much fun.
Excellent. Have a good week, everyone.
Bye everybody. See ya.